When you're ready to pop the question, the last thing you want to do is second-guess the ring. At BlueNile.com, you can design a one-of-a-kind ring with the ease and convenience of shopping online. Choose your diamond and setting. When you find the one, you'll get it delivered right to your door. Go to BlueNile.com and use promo code LISTEN to get $50 off your purchase of $500 or more. That's code LISTEN at BlueNile.com for $50 off your purchase. BlueNile.com, code LISTEN.
It's Saturday the 1st of June. I'm Ciara Evans, and this was the week that saw Donald Trump convicted of 34 felonies. Rishi and Keir battle it out across the country. Campaign launches in Scotland and Wales, and Wembley braced for the Champions League final.
Grab a cup of something hot, put up your feet, and get up to speed on the 7 biggest stories of the week. This is the Standout 7 from the Smart 7.
It's news,
but not the news.
Prime Minister Rishi Sunak was busy playing football with kids in Chesham on Monday after his dramatic mandatory national service announcement over the weekend. He's been trying to make a case that he's the change candidate and a man who can take bold action. But the response to his big idea of compulsory national service for 18-year-olds has been lukewarm at best. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer was in West Sussex delivering a proper campaign speech, and he seemed underwhelmed by Rishi's big idea.
The desperation of this national service policy, a sort of teenage dad's army, paid for, I kid you not, by cancelling Levelling Up funding.
Home Secretary James Cleverly was determined to sell the plan, while also pointing out that most people won't actually end up in the army.
It's about addressing the fragmentation that we've seen in society. Too many young people living in their own bubble, and we want to get back to the situation where people are mixing with young people from different areas to try and find a way of addressing the kind of fragmentation that we see too much of.
There was plenty of twists and turns in the election campaigns on Tuesday. Greater Manchester Police announced that they would take no further actions over claims about Angela Rayner's sale of her council house. The Deputy Labour leader had promised to resign if found to have broken the law, and she thanked her family and those who supported her. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak was in Stoke doing an awkward campaign speech in the round and promising to have people's backs. He's also continued to claim credit for the drop in inflation and focused again on asking if voters can trust Labour to continue the progress.
We really have turned a corner, and I hope you can see that the plan is working, because that's what you get with me, that's what you get with the Conservatives. We restored economic stability. We always will prioritise that.
Labour Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves was at a Rolls-Royce factory to emphasise the Labour economic plan and the difference between her plan and Tory chaos.
I want to set out the central economic fault line in this election. The choice before the British people on the 4th of July. 5 more years of chaos with the Conservative Party, or stability with a changed Labour Party.
This election campaign seems set to feature every conceivable mode of transport, as Lib Dem leader Ed Davey made all the papers splashing off a paddleboard, and Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and a larger press contingent took the sleeper train to Penzance. Rishi had a busy Wednesday, rejecting an overture from Nigel Farage to discuss a voting agreement with Reform UK and criticising Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer over his handling of the Diane Abbott issue. He also took time to take aim at universities as he talked up his new apprenticeship-based plan.
University is great, and it makes a fantastic option for many people, but it's not the only option. I'm not someone who believes that you have to go to university, and what we do know is that there are university degrees that are letting young people down.
Starmer was busy at the University of Worcester, where he and Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting was speaking about the NHS and their plan to cut waiting lists. The Labour leader says it's unforgivable that the Tories have left the NHS in a worse state than when they took power, and Streeting said it would be madness to hand the matches back to the arsonists.
The NHS is broken. It's going through what is objectively the worst crisis in its history, and we've seen 14 years of chaos, mismanagement and bad political leadership that led to record waiting lists before the pandemic and rising waiting lists since the pandemic.
Labour's smooth start to the campaign, which saw them reach a new high in a YouGov poll on Wednesday, was at risk of coming off the rails as internal politics appeared to be rocking the boat. Diane Abbott, the first black female MP to be elected, had the Labour whip suspended over remarks she made in a letter to The Observer. There appeared to be a coordinated Labour plan which saw the whip restored to her on Tuesday, and it was then expected she would make a dignified exit. However, a leak to the Times sparked a controversy with reports that she was to be banned from running as a Labour candidate. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said there's no question of any decision to ban her from standing.
The process that we were going through ended with the restoration of the whip So she's a member of the Parliamentary Labour Party, and no decision has been taken barring her.
But Abbott addressed supporters in Hackney on Wednesday and said she was shocked by the story, but that she intends to continue as an MP for as long as is possible.
I have been selected by my local party members, many of whom are here today, but the National Party is insisting that I be banned.
We're just over a week into what will be a 6-week election campaign, and already it's been a struggle for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Thursday saw another defection as soon-to-be former Tory Mark Logan defected to Labour, describing the Tory party as unrecognisable from the one he joined 10 years ago. Rishi also had his now customary awkward moment as he was asked a question by a man whose mother had died during COVID, and the PM brushed off his own Partygate fixed penalty notice and pivoted to talking about his work as Chancellor. The topic of the day was supposed to be VAT, after all three main parties ruled out a VAT rise after the election. At least Chancellor Jeremy Hunt was staying on message.
Since Rishi Sunak and I have taken on the reins, we've taken very difficult decisions to put the public finances back on an even keel. And we don't want that to change, and we're worried that under a future Labour government it would change.
Labour have committed to no tax rises or either income tax, VAT or national insurance, and Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury Darren Jones says Labour has been clear from the beginning.
Rachel Reeves has been consistently clear that we have no plans to raise taxes on working people. We've said it a million times. I'm not sure what the Conservatives are trying to get at here. We have no plans to raise taxes on working people because the burden of tax on working people is the highest it has been in the last 70 years because of the Conservative Party.
The election is not just about the Tories and Labour, though, despite most of the media attention so far being on the battle between Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer. Rishi has gone a bit Trump in his campaigning as the Tories experimented with calling Keir Sir Sleepy, a charge that Starmer has dismissed. Meanwhile, north of the border, new SNP leader John Swiney launched their campaign as polling shows their party trailing Labour. He says, though, they're focused on taking out the Tories.
The SNP are the challengers in every single Tory-held constituency in Scotland. So votes for the SNP are the quickest way to get rid of the Tory MPs and to get rid of the Tory government from Scotland.
Not to be outdone, Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey kicked off their campaign by unveiling their battle bus. It's called, for reasons that aren't quite clear, Yellowhammer 1, and he seems quite excited as they too target the Tories.
People across the blue wall are saying they are fed up of this out-of-touch Conservative government, and they know that a vote for the Liberal Democrats in so many parts of the country, like the Blue Wall, can get rid of the Conservative government.
This week also saw the Lib Dem leader out and about on a paddleboard and on a different day whizzing down a water slide. Meanwhile, Richard Tice and Nigel Farage of the Reform Party held a rambling press conference on Thursday, which included a rant about why there were so many barber shops. Thursday also saw the Green Party formally launch their campaign with a plan to push Labour to be bolder on climate action. Co-leader Carla Denyer spoke in Bristol and said their offering is unique.
I'm sure you can already tell how excited we all are for this moment. Because at the Green Party, we've got something to offer that no other party has. Real hope and real change.
In Wales, Plaid Cymru launched their campaign acknowledging that new electoral boundaries meant that they face a challenge to win seats. But leader Renab Yorworth says they intend to represent the people of Wales.
Remember, Wales's voice is being diluted. But we make this pledge. We will not allow Plaid Cymru's voice to be silenced. We will not allow Wales's voice to be silent, and Plaid Cymru's voice will never, ever be diminished.
Tuesday saw the closing arguments in Donald Trump's New York election interference trial. Prosecutors argue that the so-called catch and kill scheme that Trump and National Enquirer publisher David Pecker ran amounted to election interference, and that payments to adult star Stormy Daniels, which were reimbursed as legal fees, were false business records. Trump was joined in court by most of his family, including Don Jr., Eric, Tiffany and daughter-in-law Lara. Outside the court, in an unusual move, the Biden-Harris campaign held its own press conference featuring two of the congressional police officers from January 6th and a surprise guest with a few choice words for Donald, the one and only Robert De Niro.
We New Yorkers used to tolerate him when he was just another grubby real estate hustler masquerading as a big shot, a two-bit playboy lying his way into the tabloids, a clown. I don't mean to scare you. No, wait, maybe I do mean to scare you. If he gets in, I can tell you right now, he will never leave.
Wednesday saw the judge spend the best part of an hour giving guidelines to the jury on the questions they needed to consider, and then they headed off to the jury room to begin their deliberations. They requested additional information on some key elements, including a transcript of David Pecker and Michael Cohen's testimony. Then they went home for the evening and were due back on Thursday morning, and for once Donald didn't sound too optimistic as he left court.
Mother Teresa could not beat these charges. These charges are rigged. The whole thing is rigged. The whole country's a mess between the borders and fake elections, and you have a trial like this where the judge is so conflicted he can't breathe.
After a relatively brief period of deliberations, the jury in Donald Trump's election interference trial reached a verdict on Thursday evening. They found the former president guilty on all 34 felony counts over hush money payments to adult star Stormy Daniels, and they were unanimous in their decision on all counts. Judge Merchan has announced that sentencing will take place on July 11th, and it's not clear yet whether or not Donald Trump faces the prospect of jail. The Trump campaign have also said they'll appeal. Republican allies were quick to condemn the verdict, and Donald, now the first convicted felon to run for president, spoke to the press outside the court.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial, but the real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people, and they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. We have a Soros backed DA and the whole thing. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man.
There was a rare apology from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday evening after an Israeli strike on a Rafah refugee camp sparked a fire that killed dozens. His apology for what he called a tragic mishap came after global outrage over the deadly strike that the IDF had said was aimed at Hamas leadership. The strike sparked protests in Israel and condemnation from the EU and the UN, while the US urged Israel to take every precaution to protect civilians. With the Rafah border crossing still closed, Oxfam's humanitarian lead Magnus Corfixon said that the UK government needs to step up and help.
What we need is the likes of the UK to support these and to apply pressure. And that's also by stopping arms sales. So a ceasefire, and that the UK steps up and try to take forward what has been ruled in ICJ and the UN Security Council.
Israeli tanks reached the centre of Rafah on Tuesday as another airstrike on a humanitarian area left more than 20 people dead. There was more bad news as bad weather broke apart from the US military's temporary pier, which was supposed to speed up the delivery of aid to civilians in Gaza, and it will take at least a week to repair it. Tuesday did see Spain, Ireland and Norway formally recognise Palestinian statehood with a Palestinian flag outside the Irish Parliament in Dublin. Spanish PM Pedro Sanchez addressed the media before the EU Council meeting.
At the meeting of the Council of Ministers, the government of Spain will approve the official recognition of Palestine as a state. This is a historic decision that has a single goal: to contribute to achieving peace between Israelis and Palestinians.
Still to come in the Standout 7, Wembley gets set for the Champions League final and why Vicky McClure depends on her fans.
Right after this.
Why don't more infant formula companies use organic, grass-fed whole milk instead of skim? Why don't more infant formula companies use the latest breast milk science? Why don't more infant formula companies run their own clinical trials? Why don't more infant formula companies use more of the proteins found in breast milk? Why don't more infant formula companies have their own factories instead of outsourcing their manufacturing? We wondered the same thing. So we made ByHeart, a better formula for formula. Learn more at byheart.com.
Welcome back.
Last Saturday saw Russia use glide bombs to target a DIY store on the outskirts of the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv, killing at least 6 and injuring many more. It comes as Ukrainian troops battle to push back a Russian incursion not far from Kharkiv, which Russian President Putin says is intended as a buffer zone. Ukrainian President Zelensky was in Madrid on Monday, signing a new agreement with Spain, which should see €1 billion in military aid this year. However, the issue remains for Ukraine that many of its Western donors limit where their weapons can be used, which has made it hard for Ukraine to strike back at Russian bases. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says the time has come for those restrictions to be lifted.
The time has come to consider whether it will be right to lift some of the restrictions which have been imposed. If you then cannot attack on Russian territory, it ties one hand of the Ukrainians on their back and makes it very hard for them to conduct defense.
Russia continued to strike targets in Kharkiv throughout the week while Ukraine struck back at Russian targets, including a strike near the Kerch Bridge in Crimea early on Thursday morning that damaged several crucial rail ferries used by the Russian military. US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken was on a short swing through Europe, visiting the Czech Republic and Moldova in advance of Friday's NATO meeting. He brought news of a US aid package to help with energy security and to combat Russian disinformation. At a joint press conference with the Moldovan Prime Minister, he also flagged a shift in US policy on the use of American weapons on Russian targets in the Kharkiv region.
We haven't encouraged or enabled strikes outside of Ukraine, but Ukraine, as I've said before, has to make its own decisions about the best way to effectively defend itself. We're going to make sure that it has the equipment it needs to do that.
Saturday sees the biggest event in the football calendar, the Champions League final, as Real Madrid face off against German side Borussia Dortmund at 8 p.m. The fact that the final is in Wembley has raised the spectre of the ticketing and security shambles that happened at the Euro 2020 final, while the 2022 Paris final was also almost a disaster. So there's been a huge beefing up of security in advance of the event, with an extra £5 million invested and over 2,500 additional stewards on duty. London Mayor Sadiq Khan says the city is ready.
The men's final, what happened afterwards outside the stadium was not acceptable. The FA, the police and others have learned the lessons. The police are on alert. It's going to be a cracking final on Saturday. I'm sure it'll be safe. I'm sure the lessons have been learned.
Vicky McClure is a busy woman. She's been on the go non-stop since Line of Duty, starring in 2 series of explosive thriller Trigger Point and now appearing in a 6-part psychological drama called Insomnia on Paramount+. She's been chatting about her role as Bomb Squad detective Lana Washington in Trigger Point, and she was delighted to be longlisted for Best Drama Performance at the National Television Awards. But she did find out about the nomination from a slightly unusual source.
I've got this fan page that's run by this girl called Sarah, who I've never met, and she does a really lovely job. And she's just on it. She was on it, and that's how I found out, just opening up my Instagram, and it's always, really nice to see that.
You've been listening to The Smart 7. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. Hit that follow button and have a great day. Give us 7 minutes, we'll give you the world.
Across America, BP supports more than 300,000 jobs to keep our energy flowing. Jobs like updating turbines at one of our Indiana wind farms and producing more oil and gas with fewer operational emissions in the Gulf of Mexico. It's and, not or. See what doing both means for energy nationwide at bp.com/investing in America.